Hey, I'm ZSH Plays. Welcome to the final building episode of the Alpine Mountain Zoo. It's been 10 months since we built our little hut on top of the hill, and we've done a lot of building since then. And today we're going to be here in the Lost Wilds, completing this area with a habitat for the polar bear and the zoo's first restaurant, so the guests can sit there and gaze at the completed Lost Wilds. They'll be at opposite ends of this area, and this here is where we're going to be building the polar bear habitat. There's only the second habitat for them we've ever built on the channel. Really looking forward to it, so let's go. The Lost Wilds is themed around animals that roamed Europe in Paleolithic times. So we've got our Wisent or European bison, our Przewalski's horse, which are very similar to the wild horses that used to roam Europe, the spotted hyena, which is essentially the same species as the cave hyena that used to live in Europe, and now we're going to add in the polar bear. Now, this was originally going to be reindeer, a bit more of a low-key habitat, but when I realised that this was going to be the final habitat in the zoo, I thought we needed something a bit more showy than reindeer, so I did some more research and discovered that back in the Paleolithic times, polar bears used to roam as far south as Scandinavia and Northern Europe, and there's even reports of bones being found in England that may have been a polar bear. So I thought they would be the perfect, impressive end to this area, and that's why we're going to add them in here. We've got quite a lot of space to play with here in between the path and the mountain, and polar bears need a lot of space to be happy amongst many other things. So we're going to build as big a habitat as we can do and try and get something that would work really nicely for a bear. We're just going to have one polar bear in here, mainly due to the fact that sizable as it is, we don't have quite as much space as I would like here for them. And also because with polar bears being part of a European breeding program, there's always a need for zoos that have a facility to hold polar bears, even if they don't breed them, so that spare, if you like, males can be moved into other zoos when there's no space left in the zoos that are breeding them at that moment in time. Zoos like this, holding just one animal, can be really useful, so that's what the Alpine Mountain Zoo is going to do. Alright, the beginnings of this habitat are starting to come together, and the fact that you can see over this fence here is one of the key design features. I want this habitat to be at least 4,000 meters, so we're going to move some of the fences at the rear back a little bit just to increase the size, and then we'll start working on a water feature. The inspiration for this habitat is mainly the polar bear habitat at the Yorkshire Wildlife Park here in England, which is one of my favourite polar bear habitats. Ours isn't as big as that. We don't quite have that much room, but I like the concept. There's a big lake for them to swim in, and then there's some raised ground past the lake with a fence on top of it, and then the guest path is raised even higher so that when you stand on the path, from certain points you can actually see over the fence and get an unobstructed view of the polar bears, and then from other parts you're looking at the polar bears through the fence, but they can get a bit closer to it so you get a good view of them. I think that works really nicely, so we're going to replicate that here. So we've got the water in now. Now we're putting some rocks in, and then what we're going to do is use buffalo grass to cover up the edge of the terrain where it meets the path. It's kind of janky looking, but this is as close to the path as we can get it. But what we can do with the buffalo grass is, if we turn off align to surface, and then we can use the shift key to control the exact height of the grass, we can have the grass going out from the path without dipping down as the terrain dips down, and it gives the impression that we've just got a nice orderly straight bit of terrain next to the path that looks really good, when in reality it's actually kind of falling away and got all sorts of weird janky bits on it from when we've done the terrain work. And with that taken care of, we can move on to the fencing. I'm going to base this fence on the electric fence that they have for them at the Yorkshire Wildlife Park. So we're using one of the African stick pieces, and then various little bits, fences, some of the pieces from the, I think it's the America's Animal Pack, just to replicate the electric fence that I was seeing. And the way it works is that every third pole of the fence looks like the one we're building here, with quite a lot of stuff on it to make the electrical part of it work. And then every second and third fence, a simplified version of it where you've got the three parts that are sticking into the habitat, but not the extra parts on the outside of the fence. This is just a direct recreation of what it looks like at the Yorkshire Wildlife Park, so it should be nice and realistic. And once we've made one of these, we can position it into the steel mesh fences that we're using, and then we'll just make it a bit taller to make sure it connects up with the ground. Now, with these being the final two builds in the Alpine Mountain Zoo, we should probably talk about the future of Planet Zoo on this channel. So, of course, we will be doing a tour of the full zoo once we've finished these builds. That'll be out in probably the beginning of August, I would say. But this will be the final Planet Zoo on the channel. Like I say, it'll be at the beginning of August by the time the tour is out. And then we've got just 2 months until Planet Zoo 2, which is very exciting. But there is one more thing that I want to build in Planet Zoo before we bid farewell to this game. Cannot believe it's been 5 years since we started this channel and started building our zoos. But there is one more thing that I want to do. I'm not going to say what it is right now, but if you remember the Water World video where I created the Tierra del Fuego habitat complex at Zoo Leipzig, it's going to be a similar kind of video to that where we do one really big build in a standalone map. It's an idea I've wanted to do for absolutely ages, probably years I would say at this point, but it's just something that's never quite fitted into the zoos that we've built over the past few years. So we're going to do it as a standalone. It's going to be pretty extensive. I'm really looking forward to trying it. It's going to involve something that we've never done on the channel before, so going to be very cool. And in a few weeks' time, there will also be the top 10 builds of all time video as voted by the members of our Discord channel. As I record this, I think we've got 2 days left on the poll, where I've selected 30 of my favourite builds over the past 5 years. So we're going to see which ones you guys liked best, and then we're going to revisit those and have a chat about what we would do differently if we were to build it now. I'm really intrigued to see which builds are going to make the top 10. All right, let's talk about this build. So I'm softening the line of the fences by placing bushes down in front of it, keeping them all in the same group so that we can lower them down nice and easily. And then we'll move on to some rock work. So we've got the big pile of rocks that we've used throughout this zoo, and we're going to start scattering it around the back of the habitat just to make the pretty low resolution texture of the mountain look a bit better. And then we'll start splitting it up into little groups. I like doing it this way because it gives you a really random kind of selection of the rocks rather than placing them in yourself. Obviously, sometimes you want to place them in yourself so you can get them into exactly the position you want, but it's also really good just to have a pile of rocks like this. You can see this one pile is going to do a lot of work around this habitat, bringing it all together. So in the places where the terrain changes are pretty steep, we can use rocks to make that look more realistic. We can line some of the water feature as well with these, making sure they're not too close to the fences so that the polar bears can't jump out or anything like that. And if you're enjoying this video, by the way, don't forget to hit the like button. It really helps the channel out. We're going to start splitting these rocks up into ever smaller little groups now so that we can make a little graduation down into the waterline, get that looking really realistic. Move a few of the rocks that are left as well so we get a pretty smooth gradient. This one here is kind of in midair, so we'll move that back. And then we're going to sink down the terrain here. And then we're going to get rid of some of the rocks and use bushes instead so that it doesn't look like the polar bears could climb out there or anything like that. That also softens the edge of the rock work. We'll do some terrain painting, so we get some little paths from the bear den that we copied across from the brown bear habitat down into the water. And this is really starting to come together now. Time for the last time in this zoo, and possibly the penultimate time ever for the buffalo grass. Cannot wait for Planet Zoo 2. With the much improved grass tools, we will no longer need to place 1,000 buffalo grass into each habitat. I used to really enjoy doing this. I found it kind of therapeutic. But I've got to say, after a few years of doing it, I am ready to never place another piece of buffalo grass again. Move on to the enrichment items now. We're going to scatter these throughout the habitat to give the bear a reason to walk through different areas of it and get some dynamic movement in there. And I thought we'd make some custom enrichment as well, like a food barrel. We'll just colour this Oceania barrel green and then attach it to one of the trees in the habitat. We'll use a couple of different pieces to get the chain attached to the barrel and to the tree. There we go. And then we just need an entrance to the habitat. So we're going to use the ranch gate from the America's Animal Pack. I love how big it is and how thick the wood is. I think it's pretty apt for a polar bear. Obviously, we'll get rid of all the kind of Mexican style theming and change the colour so it fits in nicely to our zoo. And then we'll do a little bit of statue work and some signage, one of Lion's signs, as always, and then some billboards. And that's the polar bears done. Before we check it out, though, we've got a restaurant to build, so let's do that. The concept for the restaurant is that it will sit on the other side of the Lost Wilds to the polar bear habitat, on this little hill here, and it's going to provide our guests with a view across the whole area. So we're going to line it up so that we make sure we get a good view across the Wiesen and Chibbalt's horse habitats, and then we're going to build a viewing platform in front of it. So the restaurant part of the building will be on the hill, and then where the guests sit is going to be suspended above the hill. Now, we're in somewhere in Central Europe here, halfway up a mountain, so as good as a sun deck will be, that's not something that people are going to be able to use every day of the year. So we want to make sure that we have indoor seating as well. And we want to make sure that that is glass fronted, so even when you're sat there, you still get a bit of the view across the rest of the area to make sure that it's still a really cool place for our guests to eat. So we'll do that with a pretty simple kind of modernist style building. And then we'll use plaster panels to give it a bit of a shape. So we've got some wooden decking and then some black painted concrete for the rest of the building. And then we'll start detailing it. We'll put some skylights in the roof to keep it nice and light on the inside. We'll put some columns in to make sure that it's not just floating in midair. And then we're going to take the generic glass fence that we first used in Belmont Zoo and use that to create the edge of the viewing deck so people don't fall out. And with all this glass, it's still going to give them a good view even when they're sat down eating. And then they'll also be able to stand and look out over the edge if they want to as well. I've recolored it to a really dark brown as well, so it fits in nicely with the rest of the building. We'll use some of the glass doors to get some detail into these walls. And then we'll use some of the metal beams to create door frames. We can just sit these straight over these glass pieces. Once we've got the doors and the door frames in, that's going to look really good. This is the first proper restaurant in the Alpine Mountain Zoo, and the only restaurant now. We do have some of the food concessions around the Seal Fjord. There's a few food and drink kind of snack places there in some old Norwegian style houses. And then we've got the little waffle and coffee stand up in the Alp area as well that we put in the last episode, or it might have been the episode before that now. But this is a pretty small zoo, so one actual kind of main restaurant is all we'll need here. And once we've got that in, all we need to do is actually get it working and joined up to the rest of the zoo. So we're going to have a little ramp up to the entrance there, and then we'll just run a path under the floor pieces and get that connected to the restaurant so that this will actually work. And then we'll put the restaurant tables in. So I'm basically going to completely fill this outside area with restaurant tables, and then we'll start deleting a few and moving them around, getting them into realistic positions where you'd be able to walk between the tables and each table would give you a good view, etc. And then we'll have more tables on the inside, and we're also going to have booths as well. I'm not sure I've ever used the booths in the game before, but we'll want some of these around this wall in the entrance part here, and then we'll fit in as many other tables as we can as well, just to make sure there's lots of indoor space as well as outdoor space. The outdoor space is covered, so it'll be fine when it's raining, but if it's literally freezing cold, people probably aren't going to want to sit out there, want to make sure they've got an indoor part as well. And then we'll just use a few more plaster panels to tie the kitchen into the rest of the area. If we just bring this wall along here, cover up the bottom of the kitchen, that'll sit nicely and just look like a nice open plan kitchen. We'll get some lights in as well. I'm going to have these turned on just because they give a bit of a glow. This makes it a bit more interesting than having them turned off. And we'll get some lampshades on there. And then we'll put some more lights on the outside of the building as well to prevent it from getting gloomy under there if the weather's not great. And then we'll just put a sign on it. So I'm going to call it the Terrace. So I've used a little bit of the Alpine Mountain Zoo from the entrance and then just some simple text. We'll surround it with some nice rock work and planting and things like that so it fits in nicely. And that's the restaurant done. Let's take a look at it. We'll get a member of staff in first and take a look at the inside. Here we are, just see the terrace there. And for the final time, we'll head over to the staff buildings and get ourselves our polar bear, and then we'll take a look at the habitat. There he is, exploring for the first time. Still not quite as big as I'd like it to be, but there's not that much space here, and we need them to be visible to the guests. It's certainly above the minimum recommended size, especially for just one polar bear. It looks very cool up on his rocks here. And there's quite a lot of movement with our enrichment items that are scattered around the habitat. He's going to go down for a swim now. Still got that problem with the bears in the game, and they've always got their mouths open for some reason. Guess that will never be fixed now. And now he's in the water. Let's take a look at the whole of the Lost Wilds now. We've got 4 habitats in it. Love this part of the zoo. And just coming into view now is our new terrace restaurant. Let's take a look at the terrace. Here we go, our first guests taking in the view. And this is the finished Lost Wilds. And this is the finished Alpine Mountain Zoo. Thank you so much for watching over the past 10 months. It's been really interesting trying to do a smaller zoo and have it change with the seasons. That was not easy to do. So really hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll be back in a few weeks with a tour of the finished zoo. Thank you so much to those of you who joined the Explorers Club, and I'll see you again soon for some more Planet Zoo.